Hi, this is Jason Nickleby, Coordinator of Officials with the Minnesota State High School League, and this is basketball officiating training tape number 3. Take a look at about 9 or 10 plays again this week. Hopefully these plays are helpful for you as you prepare for your games and talk about philosophy, mechanics, positioning with your crew, and we get on the same page for our games. So again, not picking on any one official, team, player, coach, just trying to take a look at plays and get better each time and take a look at how we would handle these plays if they happen in our game. So with that, let's take a look at some plays. On this play, we have a front court entry pass followed by a held ball at the end, properly called by the officials. Let's talk about the rule first. For a held ball, 425 Article 2 on page 36, if an opponent places his or her hands on the ball and prevents an airborne player from throwing the ball or releasing it on a try or tap for field goal, this would constitute a held ball. It's commonly called a jump ball, but the jump ball is what we do at the beginning of the game or an overtime period. In this case, this is a held ball by rule and is properly called. Second thing, let's talk about mechanics and coverage, primary coverage areas. If you take a look at page 46 of the Mechanics Illustrated, it talks about two-person coverage of this play. The lead would be primary on this play in two-person as they have the entire paint. In three-person, since it's not involving a secondary player, the primary in this would be the center, since we draw a line right down the middle of the paint and the center has the plays nearest to them. This is primary again. If we have a double whistle, make sure we do defer to primary. In this case, we both call a held ball. If for some reason one official called a foul and one called a held ball, we would need to get together and have a conversation, make sure that we're on the same page before deciding what to do with the play. But in this case, two-person primary coverage falls to the lead, and in three-person primary coverage would go to the center. In this case, a held ball properly called by the officials. In this play, we're going to have an entry pass on the bench side block. Lead is in excellent position to rule. Trail works lower to assist with the feet. And we have a player control foul properly called by the lead. Let's take a look at the rule. This is the guarding rule, page 35 of the rule book, 423, and it talks about legal guarding position, how it's obtained, and how you can maintain that legal guarding position. We've talked about this before, but this is properly called rules-wise, excellent judgment, good positioning, really well done by the lead here. Guarding is the act of legally placing the body in the path of an offensive opponent. There's no minimum distance required between the guard and the opponent, but the maximum is 6 feet when closely guarded. Okay, so every player is entitled to a place on the floor. To obtain that initial legal guarding position, the guard must have both feet touching the playing court, and the front of the guard's torso must be facing the opponent. That's to establish it initially. Once you've done that, you can maintain legal guarding position by having one or both feet on the playing court or be airborne, provided the player is inbound status. The guard is not required to continue to face the opponent, and the guard may move laterally or obliquely to maintain this position. So in this case, the player establishes initial legal guarding position, continues to face his opponent, and the opponent plays right through his chest, and this is properly called for a player control foul by the lead. So this is really well done. Rules, judgment, positioning, mechanics. On this play, I want to take a look at our positioning and coverage and transition. You'll see we have a transition play and a dribble drive to the basket and a foul on number 2, Red, as she swipes at 31 and gets a piece of her head as we go to the basket. So positioning-wise, hustle, really nicely done here, and we get a good look at this piece of contact. This is the center's play, and this is covered on page 164 and 165 of the Mechanics Illustrated, that the center will work down to their normal position, which is free throw line extended. They might have to work a little bit lower to get an angle on this play. Don't go too low because you'll put yourself at a straight line position, but get to a position where you can see space between players. This is the C's primary play. Lead can assist, but this is going to be center's primary play, which the center takes all the way to the basket and properly calls number 2 for a shooting foul. So this is really excellent hustle, proper coverage, and good mechanics in handling this play. On this play, we have a 3-point field goal attempt. Doesn't catch a piece of the rim, and then subsequently touches one of the players underneath the basket. And it's pretty tight play. The lead gives it back to the offense, indicates that it was touched by the defensive player under the basket. Then the center, who was opposite the play, comes in with information, and they ultimately decide to keep it in the front court with the offense. So let's talk mechanics coverage wise here. We're in good position to view this 3-point attempt. Lead, we probably could have been a little bit closer to the lane line since we just rotated, which would put us in line with mirroring the ball, and we might have had an even better look at this, but we are pretty decisive. Give it to the offense. That's fine. Tough play, hard to tell who it touches. The other two officials, when we're talking about providing help, don't come with information unless you're 100% sure that, or over 100%, that you're going to give information that is going to lead to a change. We don't want to come in on a play like this and then we don't change it. I've often told partners in pre-games that if you come with information, I trust you as my partner and we're going to change it. So I'm also trusting that you're only going to come if you're 100% sure that you have information that would lead to a change in the call. So we don't want to see this kind of mechanic where we come with information and then we don't change it. So don't come if we're not going to change it. Coming in doesn't really help the situation. It kind of casts more doubt on the initial call. So mechanically, if you're 100% sure that you have something different, come in and let's change it. Otherwise, just trust your partner that they made the call that they saw, and we're gonna move ahead. So mechanically, lead maybe a little bit closer to the lane line since you just rotated and you would mirror the ball, and other officials only come in with information to help if we're going to change the call and you're 100% certain that you have information to share in that regard. Okay, in this play we have a dribble drive, front court, opposite the bench, at the basket, and a traveling violation that's called by the lead. So let's talk about our mechanics and coverage here. Trail, we're in initial good position, but then we kind of work ourselves out way too high, and we're way too far away to assist on traveling on this play. We kind of take ourselves out of position to assist, especially if a player cuts in front of us. And the lead ultimately gets this, which is a correct ruling here. But trail, let's work a little bit lower. Center is stepping down to assist, and that's good. Lead's in good position to view this and makes the proper ruling. So just from trail, let's work a little bit lower so we can assist a little closer to the 28-foot line. But let's take a look at the traveling rule again. It's something we need to review on a continual basis. It's something we struggle with at a number of levels of basketball. Just make sure we know what the pivot foot is and then what it can do once it's been established. So it talks about the fact that we can lift the pivot foot if we're going to try for goal or pass, as long as we don't put it back down before we complete that act. If we're going to go ahead and dribble, if we pick up the pivot foot prior to dribbling, that would be a violation. In this case, picks up the pivot foot, puts it back down, and then picks it back up again, and we have a traveling violation. It all happens in pretty quick succession. But this is a properly called traveling violation by the lead, and we're in good position to view this action. On this play, it seems like a real innocent play, easy play, nothing going on. Then all of a sudden, something happens. We have a potential backcourt violation, and I think coverage-wise, just something to keep in mind. If you have to pick something up off the floor, I know you want to keep the game going, keep a flow to it, but this always happens. It's just Murphy's law that something goofy is going to happen when we're not necessarily where we want to be position-wise. So if you have to pick up something, just shut the game down. We can put the ball back in play. But coverage wise on this mechanics, 42 and 115, the Mechanics Illustrated just indicates that the trail has primary coverage on this. But I want to talk about this from a rules perspective. As with most rule situations, it's never covered by just one rule. It's always covered by multiple places, which is why studying the rules, getting your nose in the rule book is an important piece of being a successful official. In this case, at least 4 references that you can find that cover how you would need to rule on this play and the rules knowledge that you would need to apply this rule accurately. And the first part is what is a backcourt violation, and that is located on page 60,991, and it says that a player must not be the first to touch the ball after it has been in team control in the front court if he or she or a teammate last touched or was touched by the ball in the front court before it went to the backcourt. So the second piece of that means you need to take a look at what is control and how do we establish that, and that is 412, and that is on page 31. And what that says is a player is in team control when a player of the team is in control and when a live ball is being passed between teammates. So in this case, has control. It continues to be in control of the offense on this pass. So that goes back to the violation that they can't be the last to touch after they've established team control in the front court. Then the second piece goes to the court areas. How do you determine what is the backcourt and whether they are in the backcourt or front court for that matter? So if you go to 413, it talks about the team's backcourt consists of the rest of the court, including the entire division line and the opponent's basket and inbounds part of the opponent's backboard. So just merely making contact with the division line puts us in the backcourt, and that is reaffirmed on Rule 435, which is on page 38, which talks about the fact that player status is determined by for an airborne player based on where they last touched the floor. So you'll see that on 435, player location status, the location of an airborne player with reference to the 3 factors that are listed in Article 1 is the same as the time as such player was last in contact with the floor or an extension of the floor, such as a bleacher. So in this case, the last time that this player left the floor, her heel is on the division line, and then she goes airborne. So in a real technical sense, this is a backcourt violation, but it's really, really tight. I think the moral of the story is let's understand the various rules that affect backcourt violations and what it takes to have one, and then we can explain it to a coach or a player why we had one or why we didn't. So I think that's the more important piece, not to point out whether we missed a violation or not, because this is really tight, and you could show this play in real speed to 1,000 officials, and 500 would think it's a violation, 500 might not. So it's more important to just understand the rule aspects that cover this play. Can be really complicated if we don't have team control, player status, and backcourt violation and those definitions. Really hard to explain why we have a call or non-call. So just get our nose in the book on those pieces, and we should be in good shape. Okay, let's talk positioning on this one and our mechanics. You'll see that we have an initial matchup on the center side, the lead rotates and the center, who is going to become the new trail, sticks with the matchup all the way as he dribbles the other side. If we have a closely guarded count, we're going to stick with it. So you see he has the closely guarded count. He's going to stick with this closely guarded until it gets to the now center side. And then you'll see that we have a center initiated rotation followed by a kick out to the new center's side and a good 3-point field goal. So this is well covered. The first piece is open angles for the center, and this is covered on page 139 of the Mechanics Illustrated, and it talks about the center and their movement. They're going to need to either take a step down or take a step up or two so that we can view space. If we're looking through the rear end of a player, we're not in the best position to see it. We probably should just stay put and view this matchup. Then we work out onto the floor, stick with the closely guarded matchup until the center picks it up. Once he picks it up, we can go back to our primary coverage area. Then you'll notice that because the center has to work his way out top to officiate this matchup on the bench side, this is a center initiated rotation. This is covered on page 155 of the Mechanics Illustrated, that when the center has to work his way up, his or her way up towards the division line to officiate a matchup, this is a center initiated rotation, and the lead should come over to that ball side, and then the trail will go down to center, which happens here and is properly done. And then the final piece mechanically, which is well done, don't bail out on tries, center and trail. Help your lead, officiate rebounding action, stick with the shooter. This is covered on page 124 of the Mechanics Illustrated, and this is well done in this play. So take a look at open angles for the center official, getting into a good position to view potential contact and violations, and then take a look at center initiated rotations and when we should be doing those, and then finally make sure we stay put on tries, and we do a really nice job on this play. Really well done by the crew coverage-wise. Okay, in this play, we have a quick transition play, uh, dribble handoff on the center side, and a traveling violation. So first, our mechanics and coverage. This is covered on page 165, 168, and it indicates that in this kind of a transition play, it's the center's responsibility to pick up the ball and then would be responsible for dribble drives on one-on-one matchups to the basket originating from the center's primary coverage area. So the center does a nice job of picking up this play, taking a look at the screening action, and then ultimately ruling on the traveling violation. Now, when it comes to the traveling violation, we talked about this rule earlier, 445. In this case, in particular, 445.3c, which indicates that the pivot foot may not be lifted before the ball is released to start a dribble. So you'll see in this case that when the dribbler picks up the basketball, she's established the right foot as the pivot foot, and then subsequently lifts the pivot foot prior to starting the dribble. So this is the center's in excellent position, good rules knowledge, good judgment, and then proper mechanics. So this is well handled by the center on this play. Okay, on this play, the ball comes over to center side. The lead properly rotates. Center stays in good position, doesn't bail out to trail right away, stays there and officiates the matchup, watches this ball screen, and then subsequently picks up the traveling violation. This is really well done coverage-wise and then judgment-wise as well. So we've talked about the traveling rule, picking up the pivot foot before starting a dribble, and you'll see here that this is properly called. From a coverage perspective, proper rotation by the lead. Good job of the center. See how he stays in position. He can view space, pick up the dribbler, and what he's doing, see if there's any illegal contact. He doesn't take himself out of position by bailing to a traditional trail position. just because the lead came over in rotation. So this is really well done mechanically, covers this well, and then properly calls number 22 in black for a traveling violation. You'll see here that the pivot foot, which is the left foot, is picked up, and then he subsequently starts a dribble, so he's properly called for a traveling violation. So well done here by the crew. Great coverage. Again, make sure that we take a look at 445 in regards to traveling violations and what players can and can't do with the pivot foot. Okay, that will do it for training tape number 3. Take a look at the rule book as it relates to traveling, what we can and can't do with the pivot foot. Make sure we take a look at violations, team control, really get our nose in the definitions, because if we don't know the definitions, it's hard to explain why we have a call or don't have a call. So we want to make sure that we get our nose in the definitions and then continue to review the Mechanics Illustrated. We'll get more consistent positioning and mechanics and philosophy if we're all on the same page on that. But overall, we're doing a great job. Keep it up. Make sure you travel safe this weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.